Okay, Vice Chair Lucido, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Poulos. Are you still CEO of Dominion?
I am.
And Dominion stands for what? Is this just a name you gave it, or is there any?
It doesn't stand for anything. It's just a name.
Okay. Dominion Voting Services has been around 18 years. 2002, you opened up in Toronto, Canada?
We were formally incorporated in January 2003 in Toronto, Canada.
You stood there for a couple years and then moved the operations to Denver, Colorado?
We moved our headquarters to Denver in 2010.
You're currently doing business in 28 states that you operate here in the United States?
Correct.
In those 28 states, approximately, well, let me go to this. Let's just deal with Michigan right now. You have about, you have a contract for each and every one of these units that you place in service in these counties in which the votes are taken?
I'm not familiar off the top of my head, but I believe we have a contract with the state, and then we very well may have separate contracts with counties. But I believe our original contract was with the state entity.
So the state of Michigan gave you a contract to go ahead and use, and I'm using your words now, what you said is, we supply machines. We do not run elections. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Those were your words, and the tabulator does the count for the votes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that can be checked by counting, hand counting the paper ballots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the software that you claim and the supplying of the machines, and this is very technical, and I need to get this so that we can clear up any ambiguity. Did you train individuals on what they're supposed to do when you put these machines or the software in service?
I was not involved, but that's typically what we do. We train county officials on how to use software.
Is there a manual that somebody who has, like, let's say, authority over the individuals that are working for them in the in the clerk's office can reference when there's a need to see how the training goes?
To the best of my knowledge, all of our manuals and user guides were submitted to the state on the original state contract and part of that process, and distributed from the state to the counties. And I know that in many situations, the counties will generate their own user guides and manuals based on our materials.
So that I'm clear, when you enter into an agreement with the state of Michigan to supply your equipment, your machines, and your software, there has to be some kind of way to make sure that they're running the machinery correctly and the software correctly. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
All right. Do you charge a fee in the contract? And I don't really want to know how much it's none of my business, but do you charge a fee for that training?
If there was a fee, it would have been part of the original upfront purchase.
How long ago? I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't give you a chance to finish.
No, and on a county by county basis, counties are free to make their own determinations. Sometimes they get supplemental training either from state officials. Sometimes they get supplemental training as the need presents itself to the counties. That's not really something I'm expert on.
I understand, and I only want to limit your testimony to what you know. If you don't know, I'd like you to, and Mr. Chairman, through the chair, I would like you to give us at least to have your lawyer who's there present with you today, write down what it is that we're looking for so that we can supplement your testimony and get the information from your office. Is that a problem?
Oh, of course.
Thank you. So, because what I'm looking at is I buy something, I want to know how to use it properly so that I don't have it malfunction and or misfire or whatever the case may be. And I'm not real familiar with a tabulator nor the software that runs the same. But if these machines that are supplied to the counties to go ahead and make, or to the communities that are doing these tabulations of the votes, that software is unique to that machine. It's proprietary, right?
The software that resides on our tabulators is proprietary,
Yes.
and that is once we certify at the federal level, that's when we lose control of the software. It is transmitted from the independent certification agencies to the counties, and then it transfers into the county's chain of custody.
Is the memory cards that you put into the machinery, is that locked down that the memory card can't be manipulated and or distorted?
Right. So
if I wanted to get the memory card out of the machine, would that if we had to remove a memory card from the machine, could that be possible?
Sure. You'd have to break the seal during the election. I'm assuming you're asking during the election.
During the election, correct?
Yeah. So as I stated, when the machines are delivered to a polling location, they are the compartments by which the memory cards are inserted into the machine are both locked and sealed. We actually have 3 memory cards, and one of them is designed to be removed at the end of election day. So there is a definitive audit on the source code of the machine. Oh, sorry, not the source code, but part of the log on the tabulator when the tabulator door is open and when the cards are removed. And it is designed that it does not come out of the machine until the polls are closed. The seal is broken by the local poll workers, and the locks are unlocked.
So that we got a correct record, there's 3 memory cards. One is designed to be removed. The other 2, I'm assuming, based on what you're saying, but I don't want to assume anything, are not to be removed.
So one of them is designed not to be removed, and that is internal. And 2 of them are removable, and one of them is designed not to be removed, just in case somebody makes any allegation on the card that was removed, even though it's securely transferred by the local election workers, oftentimes accompanied by a sheriff. There's even, and by the way, they're encrypted and signed. But even on the allegation, you could compare it to the second memory card that is a redundant copy that is designed to be continue to be locked and sealed in the tabulator.
If I tell you that somebody removed a memory card where they shouldn't have, would you have backup software or alarm systems that would go off to report that type of behavior in your proprietary machine and software?
So if an allegation was made that one of the memory cards was removed, and let's just, for the sake of your example, say that none of the poll officials noticed it, or the bipartisan poll watchers noticed it, or any voter noticed it, there would be a record of it. And we also have the other card that's in the machine, and they would be off, and the machine will not let you continue if one of them has been removed.
Do you have any validation or way to validate whether a memory card was removed from these machines? Have you started your validation? I know that there was 3. I was reading some stuff, and it says that you do something before the election process, either your company or the clerk. During the election process, there's something done regarding, and then after the election process. Have you guys started, your company started to do an after-election audit as to what happened and look into what these allegations, because you so eloquently gave your testimony, and I appreciate that, trying to clear up any inconsistencies or ambiguity. Tell me, have you started now at this point, and have you completed your after the election process?
Right. So I will point back to what I mentioned in my opening statement. We do not run elections. We are not accountable for running elections. And as such, we do not run the test before the election, or we do not run the test after election. So every state has its own local rules. And quite often, there will be a public logic and accuracy test done before the election. Many jurisdictions will repeat that test after after canvass is completed, and they will do a logic and accuracy test post-election. And then some jurisdictions take it a step further and do exactly what you are talking about, but they don't contract with us to do it. The whole idea is that we shouldn't be the ones doing it. The federal system that was put in place after the 2000 presidential election, with the creation of the EAC as a bipartisan commission that does their own accreditation of separate third-party labs that are accredited. The whole purpose of that is that no voter or stakeholder has to blindly trust any technology provider. So the test that you are asking is part of the local officials process and best done by an EAC accredited lab. I will say we have several customers, especially in light of the baseless allegations that have been levied our way in the recent weeks, that have contracted a variety of these EAC accredited independent test labs to do exactly as you say. And their checks are, there's various number of checks that they perform. And I'm certainly no expert at what they do, but the way I think of it is they are verifying that the software that was run in the election was unchanged, that it is in fact the same certified software. They can run a variety of forensic tools to ensure that what you're describing, if it did happen, they would know it happened. And they do that all independent of us.
How do I know as a voter, Mr. Poulos, that I didn't have any irregularity of the software being manipulated? How can I be sure of that?
Right, it's a great question. So the fact that somebody has made an allegation is cause enough, in my opinion, to do a hand count audit and recount. And that has been requested in a number of our jurisdictions. And at the end of the day, you have to remember that the ballot box was secure and empty at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, there was a number of ballots that each voter deposited into that sealed and locked ballot box. Those voters and their eligibility were verified by the local poll workers under the watch of the local poll workers and bipartisan poll watchers. And those ballots haven't gone anywhere. They've been under secure control of the poll workers. So even the allegation in an environment of like we're seeing right now, which is unprecedented, it's, in my opinion, it's exactly why the Michigan Secretary of State's office is working with Antrim County to perform that hand count.
Did you provide any training films? And I know that you said training manuals, booklets, I think you call them. Any training films that would physically give a video to or a link to a training film so that the individuals would learn properly how to utilize your machine and your software?
Sir, we provide a variety of training tools. I'm the original contract in the state of Michigan, I believe was in 2017. We regularly rely on a host of different training techniques and design it in collaboration with the end customer, be it the county or state. So that would have been
with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. That would have been the one you would have contracted with? She was the Secretary of State in 2017.
I don't recall who we
I think it's 2017. Is that what she?
No, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Vice Chair, but Jocelyn Benson's term began in 19.
19?
Yes.
Okay, 2019. The chair cleared it up. Could you tell me about the process, though, because you're still acting as a CEO, even though you just indicated, I think in your testimony, the majority of the company was sold?
Yes, in 2018.
Okay. And this was your company that you, from birth, basically. I'm going to say that you're the one that, did you design the software?
Not my birth, Senator, company's birth.
Oh, could you tell me, did you design the software that went for this? Do you have, was it you or was it somebody else that designed the software, how to manipulate meaning the vote count and tally to make sure that there was consistency and to make sure that there was credibility?
Well, let me just be clear. We don't manipulate anything. All our software does is takes it. If you look at a tabulator from your home county, actually, I'm not sure if you're using Dominion in Antrim County, let's say. Our tabulator software looks at the paper ballot, and we integrate the number of black pixels in the oval corresponding to a candidate's name. And that is designed in a way that the machine is interpreting voter intent the same way that a human being would. And so it's designed to be very objective. There's no manipulation of any kind. And yes, I do have knowledge of the source code that developed that.
The warranty, and I use the word warranty, I don't know another word, maybe you can help me, about post-elections to ensure the security and the trust of the election. Is there some kind of warranty that goes with that for the state when they purchase this unit and software? That it's going to act in a manner consistent with your statements as well as how you have the intended use of the unit?
We'll have to get back to you upon looking at the state contract.
If somebody didn't properly download software, would that change a result? And I'm going to every single item I can think of to see how these allegations, how these affidavits that we've taken from so many people across the state, I want to validate what they saw, what they looked at, what they heard, as opposed to what really happened. So if you weren't there, and I think there was representatives of Dominion at like the TCF Center, was there not? Is that standard and a customary in the industry of your machinery being placed into service to have people from Dominion there the night of the election?
Senator, you mentioned a few things. First of all, in terms of the affidavits and any pertaining to the accuracy of the tabulation, I am not aware of any that have been found to be credible, certainly none that I've seen, and I don't know of any judge that have found any of those allegations credible. With specific regards to whether or not it's normal to have on-site technical support from the tabulation companies, it depends. It's at the sole discretion of the county. And in the case of the TCF Center, we did have on-site technical support there. They are not part of running the election, and they are expressly there to answer any questions from the election officials whose job it is to run the election.
Was there a separate contract that was with consideration that was utilized as a result of coming to that election at TCF here in the state of Michigan?
I'm not aware of it off the top of my head. That's something we can get back to you on.
Is it, like I said, not normal? Is it customary? Let's use that word, not normal. Was there any other counties in the state other than Wayne that had assistance through Dominion being there? Meaning, do you recall, based on Michigan has been spotlighted and shown throughout the country, do you recall of any other county of the 83 counties in the state?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. So the only one that you do recall is that there was support staff there from Dominion, correct?
In Wayne County, correct.
And the only,
I think so. As I said, I don't know, Senator, but that sounds right.
Do you recall how many people that came from Dominion to assist in answering questions from election officials in Wayne County?
No, I don't.
Do you know what, I mean, is this customarily done? Have you seen this in your 18 years, I think, where
yes.
people go, they do, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, Georgia or Texas?
Sorry, one at a time. Georgia, yes. Pennsylvania, yes. Wisconsin, I don't know. Texas, I don't know. What was it? Did you mention another one?
Michigan, but you gave us an answer.
Oh, right.
Okay. And right now, is there a written report that was received from the individuals that were at the TCF Center on behalf of Dominion and working on behest of Wayne County?
No. Not that I'm aware of.
Did they report back to anybody in the company to give information as to what these allegations were and what
Yeah, I don't know.
So, in conclusion, somewhat, how do you validate what has been tabulated if there's no system in place that you can run, or if there's no software that validates it other than hand count? Is there any other way to avoid a hand count from the software and the hardware that you put in service to validate this is the vote? This is true, accurate representation of the vote.
Well, first off, there is a very well-documented system, and it starts at the EAC level long before any system is sold, with third-party testing and accreditation. In this testing center, these independent labs that are trained on election process, they go through every single line of source code, line by line. They test every facet of every feature of the machine under a lot of different permutations and combinations of elections. In addition to that, before that system it can be sold, for example, in the state of Michigan, it gets certified after a federal certification, once again, by the state authorities in Michigan. So to say that there's not there's a very well-documented system that is extremely accurate.
I appreciate
the accuracy.
Wait a minute. I guess I'm asking something else. Even though they have, like they do like automobiles, they go through a check test. Like they check everything, check the boxes. But if we want like access control, only authorized individuals are running the machine. And I understand what you said. We don't run elections. Encrypted end to end so that no one can manipulate the data. And endpoints that hold the data, that those endpoints weren't breached. Could you be specific on what systems do you have on your software that can ensure that access control, encryption end to end, and endpoints that hold the data were not breached?
Fair question. So as part of the federal certification guidelines, there is very well and rigorously documented security requirements of the media where votes are recorded and translated. I think to your question in terms of a check after a car rolls off the assembly line. So our source code remains unchanged, and that is exactly what post-election activities should verify after every election. They check that the hash code is exactly the same as the certification hash code, and that gives the local officials the knowledge that the source code was exactly the source code that was certified and tested. The check of the actual election, because the programming, and this is not in the source code of the system, but this is now how you program an election because the candidates change. The contests change from election to election. This is what's done at every election. This is what the logic inaccuracy testing done in a public forum allows you to verify that it's correct and complete.
The ranked choice voting, is it the clerk that flips it or Dominion when they do the ranked choice voting?
There's no flipping of any votes at any time on any system. Ranked choice voting is something completely different that was not used in Michigan.
Okay. Then the last one then is the post-election activity should be verified. That was your statement. What post-election activity should be verified in our state?
My personal recommendation,
yes, sir.
and which I've seen work in other states, is an authorized independent test authority accredited by the EAC. Should be doing exactly what you are looking for and verifying that the system was exactly used in a certified manner.
Did you make that recommendation to anyone here in the state at this time?
The state is the one that came up with it in the first place years ago, and I think that they've used it. I'd have to double check on the first time it was used, but it's not. This is a common practice.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll probably have some follow-up after I know that the other senators have questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Lucido. I guess I'd like to just come back to my last question about this ranked, how do we call it, ranked voting?
Ranked choice voting.
Yes, thank you. So what I'm really trying to find out from you is the functional inhibitions in the software. You say that it's not, that they can't access it, but what does that mean? I mean, do they see a button on the screen, but it's grayed out so it doesn't work? What would it take to turn it on? I mean, is that something you guys turn on when you sell the software to Michigan? How is that, how is it inhibited from being accidentally or purposefully turned on?
Well, that's correct, Senator. So it is not installed. When the election officials took possession of their system, whenever that was back in 2017-18, they would have had to separately install a module that would be part of the record that, again, as I've said, any independent testing authority could verify this, so you don't necessarily have to take my word or even a poll official's word for it. One of the claims that I think I've seen that may be related to this is the allegation of fractions in our reporting software. As I said in my opening statement, there is no fractional voting. That's just not a feature of our system. And any audit of our database would show this. We don't allocate fractions and certainly don't do any switching or deletion of these votes.
So when the ranked voting occurs in the states that do allow that, is there a fractional vote count that comes out in those situations, or is it still whole numbers?
No, so the report that I happened to see in, it was, I think, another hearing in your state, and it was attributed to our system. I can tell you that's false, and I haven't seen any report of where that report came from. It looked like it was just created on PowerPoint. I can tell you that does not come from any report on our system. And that's something any one of your counties that use our system could verify for you. In the states that do use ranked choice voting, it is a separately installed module with separate training. And the telltale sign of whether or not it's on is you look at the ballots. So beside Senator McBroom's name on a ballot, there might be, if it's a vote for 5, there might be 4 different columns. So I could vote for you as my first choice or my second choice, third or fourth choice. The rules on this vary in the jurisdictions that use them. But again, it is not allowed for use in Michigan. It has nothing to do with Michigan. It wasn't used for Michigan. And that's something that can be easily and independently verified.
So on with the fractional voting issue, since you bring this up, and I would have, if one of the other committee members hadn't, I've seen a page that appears to be a screenshot that demonstrates fractional votes. And at the bottom of it, it says Dominion software. Is there any screen in your software that would allow that to happen? And if not, then where did this come from?
Absolutely not. It does not come from our software. Our reports typically don't have from Dominion software on the bottom of our reports. Our reports can be obtained through the Secretary of State's office or counties that use our systems. And as to the all-important question of where that screenshot came from, to me it looked like it was an actual PowerPoint report. Your guess is as good as mine. All I can tell you is it did not come from our system.
I'm going to go back slightly, and it's not that I won't come back to fractional voting, but I'm going to mull over what you said, and perhaps we'll come back from a different angle. But you were mentioning how in the post-election, your software, the machinery is audited by the EAC or potentially by a third party, correct?
Yeah, the federal process specifically requires it to be thoroughly tested, including source code review, accuracy test, volume test, environmental test. It's very comprehensive. The manual is thousands of pages of long, the requirements.
Why doesn't Dominion do some of its own auditing of the systems at the completion of the election afterwards? I mean, do you come to any of the counties, take back machinery or software and reevaluate how it performed yourself?
That's a great question, Senator. The whole system is designed so that no voter needs to blindly trust any individual company, doesn't need to blindly trust any individual technology or any individual poll worker. So the role of auditing and testing prior and after the system is best not done by the company that provides the actual technology in the first place. It is best done by the election officials whose accountability is to run the elections under their total control, and best done by independently accredited experts from a bipartisan federal committee that reviews everything from competence on the technical and the procedural side as it pertains to elections. And so that's why we don't audit our own software. Now, to the question of do we test our software? Absolutely, we test our software very, very thoroughly, but that happens completely independent of any customer jurisdiction or the certification lab. This is generally something that we do very extensively prior to submission to the federal government for federal certification.
How would your company know then if there were issues with the interface ability, with customer satisfaction in regards to the performance of the software? What do you do to receive feedback on how well the program works and how well it interfaces?
Well, it's an iterative exercise through continued conversations, collaborative in nature with our customers that use our software and systems.
And now turning my attention, and I'm sorry to kind of bounce around here a little bit on you.
No, no worries.
When we look at the Antrim report that's recently come out, there's specifically notes regarding the absence of logging within the steps of the adjudicated ballots. You went through for us what the adjudicated ballot is and what that entails, but you mentioned there's both an automated and a non-automated system for adjudication. Which one is it that Antrim County had, and where are these logs that the report that came yesterday says are missing?
There's no automated process for adjudication. The two different systems are one that is manual in nature, that requires local bipartisan adjudication committees to remake new paper ballots based on mistakes that they agree on that a voter who is voting absentee have made. And the second is the same process, but instead of remaking a paper ballot, they make their selection and their determination electronically that is attached to the original image. And so Antrim County used the manual process, not license the digital adjudication software. And we know for a fact that they could not have used it because they did not record absentee ballot images, which is a prerequisite to use a digital adjudication.
So in my township, and I'm part of a small township, and by the way, just for the record, because I'll get in trouble later if I don't correct you, Antrim County is downstate, not in the UP. It's close to the UP, but it's downstate.
Fair enough. As you might have surmised, Senator, I have not been to Antrim County. It's on my to-do list to visit Antrim County.
It's a beautiful place. I hope you'll get the chance. Regardless, so in my precinct, I don't see any computers there at all. I mean, there's one tabulator. And so does that mean then that if they need to do adjudication of ballots there for an absentee ballots, they're going to have a manual process then, correct?
That's correct.
If a place has a digital process, they would have to have a computer there that interfaced with the tabulator?
That's correct.
Okay. And so are those networked? Is the computer then networked directly to the tabulator on a local area network?
The systems are designed to be closed networked, which means they are connected to each other in a local area network. but they are not designed to be connected to the outside world through either an internet connection or any other external connectivity device.
Is there something, though, that would prohibit that from occurring?
I'm sorry, is there something that would prohibit connectivity to occur? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, if the locals were to have that computer connected to the World Wide Web and also networked to the tabulator, is there something in the software that would shut things down at that point? Would it continue to operate? What is the security protocol at that point?
Well, first and foremost, the physical security that is under complete control of the election official is paramount. And there's no adjudication that ever happens at a polling place. One of the audits that an independent test authority accredited by the EAC can perform is a test to look at whether or not that computer was connected to the internet, which of course it's designed not to.
I thought that you might have just said that adjudication doesn't take place at the polling place, but I'm not sure. Is that what you meant to say? Because
Yes.
I mean, isn't that where, if there's a ballot with an overvote, isn't that adjudication going to take place there at the polling place?
Okay, fair enough. So I did say that. So let's take a couple steps back to make sure we're on the same page.
Please.
In a county like Antrim or your county, where they are using a manual adjudication process, adjudication does not happen at the polling location. Adjudication happens only as it pertains to absentee ballots that are received at whatever location that county may be processing the absentee ballots that come in. So the county runs their independent process in verifying the absentee ballots that come in, verifying voter eligibility per whatever rules they have, and then the ballots are then processed, usually, and to my knowledge, exclusively at a centralized location that is physically controlled by, in every respect, by the local election officials. So in a county such as Antrim, the adjudication would have been done by hand. Any paper ballots that needed to be adjudicated would have been done by taking a problem ballot, if there was agreement by the adjudication board, and taking a brand new blank ballot and making the marks that the panel agreed to. They would put the actual ballot somewhere else for keeping, and then the ballot that they made would be the one that would be scanned. In the case of Antrim, and I strongly suspect your home county as well, that scanning would have happened through a polling place tabulator, but not at a polling place. So in the case of Antrim, what I just learned the other day was out of the 18 tabulators that they had, 2 of them, I believe, were dedicated for absentee ballot scanning through a county board.
Okay. So,
and I will add, in this scenario, there is no connectivity of any kind. We were mixing digital adjudication when you're doing digital adjudication, but in the scenario that we are talking about now, as it pertains to your county or Antrim County, there is no internet connectivity at all.
okay, thank you. But it does open up kind of the can for the other, major thing that we've talked about, where obviously in TCF, they were using digital adjudication.
Well, let's come back to that in a second. I just want to clarify one thing. So the reason why we don't need adjudication for in-person voting, that is if a voter made the same mistake in a local precinct where they are in person, the voter has the tabulator will prompt the voter about their error and offer the voter a second chance to correct their ballot. So in a hand marked paper ballot scenario, if the voter selects your name and then crosses or fills in the oval beside your name, and then crosses it out and fills in an oval below your name in the same contest, and it was only a vote for one contest, they're the ones that in-person voting, the voter themselves is feeding their ballot in the tabulator, and the tabulator will prompt them of their mistake, so they have a chance to correct it themselves. You don't need an adjudication panel because the voter can correct it for themselves. The issue arises in absentee voting, where the ballot has been now separated from the voter because it has been sent through the mail. And we are without the adjudication process, you're not giving that voter the same chance. So it's obviously different, but the states that allow it have very strict rules and offer guidance to the bipartisan adjudication panels of what they are and aren't allowed to do per state and local law.
Thank you. In the situations where they choose to use digital adjudication, such as at TCF or other mostly larger counties, and a computer then is local area network connected to the tabulator, what is to, you answered earlier, it's up to the locals to provide the security, but if they were to allow that computer to be connected to outside networks, does that present a vulnerability to the tabulator's programming?
Well, the system, as I said, is designed not to be connected. So if they're running certified software on those systems that are not connected to the internet, the record of what the adjudication panel is doing gets appended to the original ballot image, and they are available for audit. So these are questions best answered by the election officials that work to secure that location, because you can imagine conceptually that's just as dangerous as not having control of your in-person voting precinct. Back to the example of your home county. If you didn't trust the poll worker and you didn't trust all of the bipartisan watchers, that speaks to the security of the overall process, not to the accuracy of the tabulators. As I've said in my opening statement, the true test of a tabulation system such as ours is in the manual recount and an audit that is taking place. And that is something that is always available to do.
And I guess what I'm trying to come back to, because I started off with this question about logging of security. And so would outside manipulation, if somebody had these things connected, and obviously that's not the case in Antrim County, but potentially, possibly the case in other counties, would those security logs represent if somebody were to attempt some manipulation?
Well, certainly not. I don't think so. That's really a question for election investigators. I'm not aware of anything that has been found to be credible. But as I said, this really is a question for the officials that control the physical custody of the ballots. Our machines are responsible for the accuracy in regards to counting the paper ballots, and that's exactly what they do.
In the Antrim, back to Antrim, and I know we're bouncing around. In Antrim County, the report says that there is a period of time where there isn't any security logs. What is the explanation for that?
So, Senator, I've only had a cursory review of what I consider the biased and report that came up. I've also had a chance to cursory review, I should say, of the Secretary of State's response, which I frankly agree with the response that was issued recently to that report. As I've mentioned earlier, Dominion did not program Antrim County. We have no access to their systems. We are still not in possession of any of the logs or any of the databases or any of the election material from Antrim County. And so, as I said, a lot of the arguments were incomprehensible to me, but then again, I haven't seen any of the files, so I can't comment on what it is they're looking for, other than I know some of the conclusions were wrong and false.
Okay. Senator Tice has some questions.
Hello there. Thank you for being with us today. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So there's a lot of confusion. I want to start with Antrim. I know we've been over it, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but because there's so much confusion, I want to clarify it for people who haven't been there and for who don't understand what the process was that happened. So when a clerk is getting ready to do an election, she's bringing in all of the information for all of the things that are going to go on the ballot. And there's a lot of things, and it's unique all the way down to the precinct, because we have precinct delegates. So it goes all the way down to that level. And so it's very, very specific. And so they get all of that information, and then they lock the election. And that's when the ballots can start to get printed and all the testing can be done. And at the point that it was locked, there was a realization, and you spoke to this, correct? That, that there was a candidate that they found that was left off. You said it was a school board member. I thought that she had testified that it was a township, or no, a village trustee, but not sure which it was. Anyway, it was.
Could very well be correct. I'm not sure on exactly what was. All I know is the programming changed on.
Correct.
On ballots that affected 3 precincts.
And I thought maybe there was something else like a millage or something else too, but nonetheless, it would have changed the format of the ballot once they were reprinted. It would have looked different even. There would have been additional information on the ballot that hadn't existed there previously. So for that particular precinct, it looked different. Would that have affected outside areas beyond that precinct such that all of it needed to be reprogrammed? My understanding was it did. Is that true? So the entire county needed to be reprogrammed for the tabulators, not just the one precinct. Is that correct?
Well, I'll try to answer it this way. You're correct when you say that the election was locked. My understanding is that was sometime in September. And the ballots had PDFs generated for final sign-off by county officials. And once that sign-off occurred, ballots were printed. And I believe the ballots were then in custody of the county. Mm-hmm. Whatever the change is, whether it was a candidate or an addition of a contest, to the best of my understanding, the change, as it would be noticed by a voter, and I'll say it as simply as I can, the voting information, meaning the contests and the candidates in each contest, were only different after the change in ballots that affected 3 precincts, which corresponded to 3 tabulators. The issue on how the people that were programming the election, as I understand it, because it wasn't our company, but I have a good understanding of this, and it's going to be apparent why they did it this way. They updated the election project to correctly identify what the extra candidate, the extra contest, whatever it was. But care was taken to make the ballots that were printed and in possession of the county for the other 15 tabulators, care was taken to make them exactly the same. And the way there's a good reason for that. This feature exists because a lot of jurisdictions have the requirement where there might be a last minute court order to remove a candidate or to add a candidate. And it's simply impossible to reprogram thousands of machines overnight from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So this is why the feature exists. In this case, it was deployed to save the ballot printing of what was already in possession. So again, best of my understanding, they only really had to destroy ballots, the blank ballots that were set to go for 3 tabulators, and they only reprinted the ballots associated with the change. Now, where the error happened was as I said, there was 2 different human errors that were compounded by the way that it was programmed. So the first error, there was instructions given, as I understand it, to reburn all 18 memory cards for each of the tabulators. I don't think this happened. So that was the first mistake.
She testified that it did not.
Right. The second, it's clear that I'm assuming, I shouldn't say it's clear. I'm making the assumption that a public logic inaccuracy test was not performed at that point, because had it had been, the change would have been noticed, or the error would have been noticed. So specifically, to the best of my knowledge, of the 18 machines, some were running September project and some are running October project, and some of the ballots were September ballots and some of them are October ballots. So a couple things. Normally, if programmed in a usual way, the September memory cards would not have been allowed to be uploaded into our results and tally application. And this is the part of the application after the memory cards get securely transmitted, often with a sheriff, back to the central location, and those cards are uploaded, and the results are compared to the actual printout from the tabulators. So normally the September cards would not have even been allowed to be uploaded, but because the care was taken to make this allowable, they were. And so all 18 cards were able to be uploaded into the results and tally module. And that's where there was an error in the unofficial report. So as I mentioned, that's a very big reason why we do Canvas, or why election officials do Canvas, because that's where this was noticed, identified, and corrected long before results were made official.
So you've testified to all of this, but what you're doing is getting into the excruciating detail and making it extremely difficult to see the bigger picture for the people who are not accustomed to the detail of the tabulators. What I'm trying to do is to provide a picture for what this looks like from the voter's perspective and then from the outcome perspective. So without the proper programming and without the proper ballot, if I go in and feed that into the tabulator and the ballot that goes in is not the ballot that it expects to receive based on programming, then I'm going to have an outcome that is not an accurate outcome, because the ballot isn't the accurate ballot that it's supposed to have, right? So we've added a contest. We've shifted stuff around. We're using September instead of October. There's something different with respect to it than it is expecting to receive. This isn't a Dominion thing. This is a programming thing. And so I'm trying to wrap my brain around what that would look like on the outcome perspective and how that would affect the numbers, because I'm feeding in one thing and it's trying to tabulate on something completely different. And I know that your system wouldn't allow this, but if I were to take something from precinct 8, walk it over to precinct 6 and feed it in, stuff wouldn't be in the right place. It wouldn't have the right questions on the ballot. And so as it tried to tabulate it, it would attribute the wrong numbers to the wrong things, assuming it would take it, of course. And then I'd have the wrong numbers in the wrong place. It seems to me, in my non-election brain, that that's similar to what happened here. If you step out of the detail and you look at the frame, you look at the outcome, is that...
I think I understand, and I apologize for getting into the weeds. I'm accused of that quite often, actually. But if you look at it from a 30,000-foot level, from the best of my understanding, we have some tabulators that were programmed for September that were fed September ballots. And we have some tabulators that were programmed for October with October ballots. As long as the October ballots were read by the October memory cards and the September cards